Hey, what's up guys? Matt here with M2 Lumber, and today we're going to be changing out 100 carbide cutters on our 20-inch helical head planer. Now the reason we're changing these out is because we've been having issues with the power load on the motor being too high, and that's an indication to us that the cutters are getting dull and we need to rotate them or swap them out. So here's a good visual indicator of what that looks like. You can see the shiny edge on the front of the cutters, and that's an indication on carbide that it's getting rather dull. You can feel this as well. The first thing that we're going to do though is going to go ahead and take all these cutters out 100%. Some people will just loosen and rotate, but I highly don't recommend that because a lot of times you can get a buildup of pitch and gum from the wood material that you're planing behind and around the cutters, and if that's the case, you want to make sure you clean all that up before you put your inserts back in. Otherwise you run the risk of them not seating properly, and that can be really bad for cut quality. So we've got all those out of there. Now we're going to soak them in a cleaning solution. You can use whatever you like. I'm using Shield's Bit and Blade Cleaner, and I'm going to let that soak in there while we go over and work on cleaning up the rest of the cutter head to get all the pitch and the gum off. So there's all the residue and nasty stuff that I was telling you about. We want to make sure we clean this up so that when we put them back on that they're sitting nice and flat. So I'm spraying them down with the pitch and gum and resin cleaner, and I'm going to scrub it with a brass wire brush. Once that is nice and clean, I'm going to go ahead and blow it off with a air nozzle to get most of the residue off, and then we'll wipe it down with a cloth afterwards. And once we get that all blown off, we're going to go ahead and go back over it with some RP. That's a rust preventative, and that's because that the cleaning solution is fairly oxidizing, so we want to make sure that we protect it so that it doesn't rust up on us. I'm using Shield's T9 product here for this time. Okay, and you can see that looks so much better. We got all the grit and grime and the rust off of the surface, ready to go. Okay, now we're going to take our inserts and screws out, and first step is to just dry them off and sort them out. We do want to go through and we're going to do a wipe down to get all the residue off of the edges of the carbide inserts, but I'm also going to be inspecting these at the same time. I'm going to be looking for damage or chips or cracks or anything like that, because we want to make sure that we don't put any of those types of inserts back into the machine. If you do, it's just not going to run very well. Those will eventually wear down faster. They will possibly crack or break or be damaged even worse. So here you can see as I'm wiping them down, I'm also looking at the edges to make sure that they're not chipped or broken. If they are, I'm setting them aside and sorting those out. So here's a good example of a dull edge. It's not so easy to see, but there is a shiny two-tone color on the edge there, and that's just where the wear is from being run in the machine. As opposed to a brand new edge, it looks very crisp like this one here. There's no two-tone, it's very sharp. That's what we're looking for when we're putting these back in. And when I find that edge and make sure that it's not damaged, I'm going to mark it with a Sharpie, and that way I will know the orientation of the cutter when I go to reinstall them back into the machine. All right, and these are some of the inserts that I've had to replace due to damages that we were talking about earlier. So if you look at some of these up close, you can barely see what I'm talking about, but it is still bad enough where I don't want to use them. There's a little nick or a crack here in the middle of this edge, and that's going to be enough to where it's going to break down fast, cause excessive wear, and then poor cut quality. So we don't want that going back into the machine. This one here has a chip out on the left corner where part of the cutter is gone. That's just as bad as having a crack or somewhere in the middle. And this next one here has a chip out on the right corner. So those are things that we're going to be looking for. Next, I'm going to spray some lubricant on those screws as well to make sure we don't get any kind of seizing when we're reinstalling these in the machine. And then we're going to go put everything back together. Now again, I've got my Sharpie to indicate which direction they need to go. When I'm installing these, I'm doing this by hand, and I'm hand tightening only right now. There's a very specific way that you need to do this to make sure that the insert is seated properly. And there's very good instruction on Shelix or Bird Tools website. You want to pull the insert actually away from the seat and allow it to center itself. Once that's all done by hand, I'm going to go back and torque it actually using this handheld torque wrench. This is a 6 Newton meter torque wrench, which is recommended for these types of inserts, and you have to do all 100 like this by hand. Highly recommended to do it this way. Don't use any kind of impact wrench or tool. You have to make sure that you don't over tighten because they will crack. Now that it's all done, we can run a board through the planer and take a look to enjoy our quality. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions or comments, drop it on down below.